Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Marala Zulisus Anaya. My student ID 2520076. In this video, I wanna explain about contextual understanding. Okay. In order to develop communicative competence, students need to understand the way speaking and listening can be adjusted to meet the demands of variety of context. They also need to be aware of the way in which spoken language can be manipulated for different purposes. Students learn that the purpose, audience, and situation affect the decisions and choice that they make. This is known as the situational context. But before I explain about situational context, there is some factor that important to understand for students, which is first the purpose of the communication, second the subject matter, third the role of communicating and the relationship between them, and fourth the situation surrounding the communication, example, the physical setting and the formality of the occasion. And the last is the socio-cultural beliefs and values of those participating in the communication. Okay, first is about situational contextual. The decisions that students make about the decision that students make about their speaking and listening will vary according to the context. These decisions are influenced by the following. First, the situation or setting in which the speaking and listening take place. Example, who speak at assembly, when to speak and when not to speak at the movies, when to speak and when not to speak when there are visitors at home. Second, the purpose of the speaking and listening. Example, thanking someone, asking someone for help, discussing a book, or delivering a lecture. Third, the rules and relationship between speakers and listener. Example, family and friend, teacher, principal, shop assistant, doctor, police officer. Fourth, the physical setting of the communication. Example, home, classroom, sporting event, public library, and restaurant. Five, the mode of the communication. Example, face-to-face with one person or several people, telephone conversation or inquiry, radio, or using a microphone with a large audience. And the last is the topic being discussed. And the second is socio-cultural. There are many socio-cultural factors that influence the composition and comprehension of speaking text. 1. The way that people use spoken language reflects and shapes their view of the world. 2. Speaker and listener are strongly influenced by their gender and ethnicity and status. 3. Spoken language is used to establish relationship and group identity. 4. There are many different varieties of English around the world, including varieties of standard English. Each variety reflects and shapes socio-cultural attitudes and assumptions. 5. Spoken text can be crafted and manipulated to influence others. This is often done to maintain or challenge existing power. Third, what students need to know. First, Speakers and listeners make critical decisions when composing and comprehending spoken text. When composing and comprehending spoken text, students need to learn how to vary the language they use according to the context they are in. This is known as changing register. Register is made up of three components. First is field, who or what is being talked about, also known as the topic. Second, tenor, the relationship between speaker and listener. Third, mood, how the spoken text is being delivered. Example, face-to-face. Decision made by speaker and listener when composing and comprehending text. Question about purpose. What do I want to say? Second, why am I saying it? Who will be interested? Question about the audience. First, what is the best way to get my message across? Second, how will I organize my idea? Question about the situation. When is speaking or listening expected? What type of listening is required? Second, speaking adjusts their speech as they identify with different groups. Oliver et al. 2005 describe how people form speech communities and speech networks. When people speak to the same group of people frequently, they form speech communities. Students experience this at school when they form friendship group or join a club or sport team. Certain speech patterns form between the speaker that make them feel like a group. They will have a lot in common and will not always need to explain the things they talk about because they already share a lot of information. Example, events that happen at school, at training, or in the family. Third, speaker and listener consideration of different point of view can confirm, broaden, or challenge an existing view. This will help when students begin to analyze spoken text. Spoken text can be interpreted from different point of view. The speaker's personal belief, values, and experience influence what they say. There are gaps and silences in spoken text. Listeners interpret these gaps differently based on their own socio-cultural context. Speaker may assume that listeners share their value and culture knowledge. The values of dominant group or culture are often represented as the norm. Fourth, the social and cultural background of language user will influence their speaking and listening choice. Depending on the speaking and listening context, the elements can be people in a position of status and power, or cause them to be significantly disadvantaged. Example, an indigenous student may not be aware of the conventions of standard Australian English conversation within a school context. Their reluctance to make eye contact or to contribute answer to some types of question might lead to them being considered not competent as a language user. 5. Speakers consequently select and use linguistic devices to enhance impact or to influence particular audience. It is important that students develop awareness of the power of language persuade, entertain, and inspire, as well as its power to isolate, denigrate of marginalized people. 6, or the last point, is spoken text can be investigated and analyzed to reveal their values and assumptions. Students are continuously immersed in spoken message through the media and from the people they encounter in the community. The fourth point is developing critical awareness. The use of English inextricably involved with values, beliefs, and way of thinking about the world we inhabit. Students also need to develop the skill critical literacy, especially an awareness of the relationship between language and power. Curriculum framework in 1998. Using the type of the question list above will help students develop critical awareness of the spoken language. Fourth is embedding speaking and listening within the classroom. This activity allows students to develop their understanding of how spoken language varies according to the context. This context can be easily created when designing units of work that use inquiry or collaborative learning process. See the CD-ROM for the pro forma negotiation of inquiry process. 6. Focusing on contextual understanding in a unit of work. Students need experience where they can explore, discuss, and practice the spoken language required for different contexts. Unit of work provide many such experience. The inquiry process is an effective approach to use, as learners focus on one topic while developing skill across several learning areas. Here is example of table for integrated unit of work. That's all from me. Please forgive me if you get a lot of mistake. Telah saya say, wallahul muwaffiq ila aqwamit thoriq. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.